Okay, then. All right, so it's Sunday. Sunday, the 26th of February, 2017. I don't even know where to begin. We have had these protests at a lot of Republicans have been protested. I think some Democrats as well. There's some sort of concerted effort. Indivisible, I think, is the name of the organization. Just to make it plain where I stand, I don't. I look at these people and just go, oh, okay. Listen, people have the right to organize. They're obviously organized. There's obviously some money paying for these Facebook ads that are organizing them. But they're also, they look kind of local in some of the news reports. So I don't, I'm not going to make too much of a judgment with that, about the whole kind of conspiracy theory of people are being bussed around or something. Then again, the news could always just put their camera on somebody who looks local. Because, anybody in the big city, if they hear like that kind of twang, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, they must be local. We're talking about, like, Chicago, but they got a cowboy hat, so they must be local. So that's pretty easy to kind of, to use. So I'm not really impressed. I remember, I think, the 28th Amendment, they had, there was like a wolf pack from TYT, and they were trying to push the 28th Amendment. And they had like similar organizational chops, I don't particularly think there were people with big pockets behind it. You never saw like Facebook ads on it or anything. But it was on like TYT, so that's a bit more grassroots, but, does it really matter? I don't think we're at a point where we really give a shit about protests anymore. When there's violence at protests, we get pretty pissed off. Whoever's committing the violence, it's wrong. But as far as looking at a protest like we used to, the bar has been raised so high by the violent protests in France and all over the world over the last couple of decades that was, covered on people's cell phones, that a bunch of people kind of being either they're pushing to get like some answer on Obamacare, or they're really just, doing the hate Trump thing. They've kind of, they kind of shot themselves in the nose despite their face. There's just, once you kind of see that a lot of these things are like small groups of people that are organizing it, and they're kind of manipulating other people, and the people may or may not kind of believe in it. They're just really asking stuff like, we want to see Trump's tax returns or something, trying to embarrass Trump. You stop caring, right? Like it used to be, you saw a protest and you were like, oh my God, people are up in arms. It's a revolution. Oh my God. Now it's like you see, especially at the airports when they had that, and now they have this over at the town hall meetings. Okay, that proves to me that you are really on the I hate Trump bandwagon. Okay. You have every right to hate Trump. I might be protesting Hillary Clinton just as hard. Being a progressive, I guess you could kind of call me that. I know I was a Bernie supporter, but I definitely did not like Hillary Clinton, and I might be protesting something she's doing right now. Like, this sword kind of cuts both ways. So if people just really hate Trump and they're gonna protest everything he does, we're just gonna have protests. Now, I was in a fraternity. I know that's another thing I shouldn't admit, being a liberal. Oh my God, don't you all just rape people? Yes, yes, we do 2 or 3 rapes a day. Actually, we actually have it like in our like little notepad, like make sure we rape. You know, please. We were like a Star Wars fraternity. Our families were named after like C-3PO and R2-D2. Okay, um, we were lucky if our heads didn't explode when we talked to girls. And yeah, sure, yeah, we were. I was actually approached in college because I ran the programming board. In addition to a fraternity, I was a bit more social than most of my guys, and I was approached. Hey, we want to do a talk about date rape, and like me and a couple of the guys looked at each other like, "You want us to like? What do you mean?" Well, talk about it so that you're less likely to do it. Wait, have you met us? I know we just met a little while ago, but seriously? And it was like some girl from like like a SUNY college or some sort of New York college where that whole rape culture thing had taken hold. I went to a commuter college. I think there was one rape on campus in like the last decade, and it happened because it was a group I think that came off of campus that was from the local area in New York City, and they had assaulted some girl, and that's horrible. I mean, whatever, they should have those blue phones and all over every campus. But to think that there's some kind of culture, I think that there's a culture at all on a campus that doesn't even have dorms, doesn't really have any sort of campus, any kind of campus culture, and any kind of campus culture that could have existed was really squashed by political correctness, like so monumentally quickly that it, like nobody had any friends. They had like a clique. People just kind of went to school and went home. It was kind of like high school, but with less friends. The reason I'm bringing this up is I was in a fraternity, and I would get, let's say, 4 or 5 guys together who were always kind of hanging out at my offices, and we'd go upstairs to meet with, I don't know, like a sorority or to meet with the Intergreek Council or something. And by the time I got upstairs, because it was like a basement, I would get to like the main floor, and nobody would be behind me. And that happened with the programming board, that happened with the fraternity, that happened with pretty much any organization I was part of. Things just peter out. And I remember I actually got on board with the Wolf Pack, the 28th Amendment. Like I said, I was a big Bernie person, and I wanted to get money out of politics. And, it seemed like at least a good idea, have an amendment. There was some great marketing, too. But then, like, it came time to actually do stuff, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and that's what happens. People get sick. They just can't fit it into that little bit of time they have available anymore. In college, like half the people I lost is probably because they had a class, and they thought I was talking like 10 seconds, and then, I went, going up the stairs took 10 seconds. Uh-oh, I gotta go. All sorts of things happen and people just kind of disappear. So when you see a lot of people protesting, yeah, it can be grassroots, but any kind of maintained protest or like a bunch of different areas at once, it's kind of staged, and it looks staged. It feels staged. It is staged. Quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, just might be a duck. And the only way that people can really afford to do that is if they're being paid in some way, even if it's just like a bunch of meals or something like that. Somebody up top has to kind of take care of the people who are doing the protesting. So I see a lot of these protests, and yeah, I know there are a lot of people who hate Trump. I know that I've seen the polls. And, the people that don't like him, some of them, a small percentage of the people who don't like him really, really don't like him. And surprisingly, there's, a share of Republicans that are in that camp, the never Trumpers. Never Trumpers. But these kind of sustained kind of protests only come out of movements that are supported in some way. I mean, it could be, just like a group of 1,000 people who are giving in cash. It doesn't have to be that much. It doesn't have to be like I'm getting paid, $1,000 a day to go and sit where the Bernie crats are sitting to make sure they don't, get near the front row. It doesn't have to be like the DNC stuff. They tend to have more money. It could be more grassroots. It could be transportation and food and but a lot of these questions going on at these town halls, or that went on, I'm not sure. I think they start work tomorrow. So, that whole thing is over. A lot of the questions were about Trump, and they weren't necessarily policy questions. They were more very skewed questions. I remember seeing, I think the first one was about his tax returns. I was watching it, like I said, I was watching Anthony Brian Logan, and he had one of the people on from one of the, he actually showed one of the news pieces on this, and you saw like the first question on the list of questions to ask was, do you think we should see Trump's tax returns? And it just seems kind of unimportant. This whole Russiagate thing seems kind of silly. I mean, it's one thing if, I don't know, he let a Russian company take over some uranium in the United States or something. That's one thing. But there's really nothing other than talking about not being enemies with Russia that he's done that you would go, hey, are you Putin's bitch? What's going on here? None of that's actually happened. The White House, what is it? I always mispronounce his name, Priebus, the guy who used to be the RNC chair. He asked the FBI if it would be possible for them to put out some of the information they had just told him about the Russian connection being bullshit, and nobody listens to the whole fact that the FBI is saying the Russian connection is bullshit. They listen to, wait a sec, is he allowed to do that? That kind of seems like what the question was. Hey, are you guys allowed to make statements about this stuff? They definitely made a statement about Hillary, right? That was a strange time. I didn't think they were allowed to do that. I could see why somebody would be like, are you allowed to do this? Or are we allowed to talk to you about this? Are you allowed to tell us it's bullshit? So everyone ignores the fact that the FBI is telling him that there's no connection that they see. And it's the only really the FBI is really our only kind of intelligence agency that makes any sort of sense right now. It seems like the CIA is just built to deal drugs and do all those things we don't think we do or we didn't think we did. Overthrow governments, assassinate people, and, drone whack leaders of other countries. The CIA really doesn't fit in with Americanism. I'm sure they're doing all sorts of things to keep us safe, and maybe what they have to do is necessary, so I'm not going to say let's get rid of the CIA or they're a criminal organization. I'm saying they're involved in some shady shit, and that makes me kind of lean towards the FBI as really our kind of intelligence agency. So when they're saying there is no Russian connection, they've looked into it, I would listen to that as opposed to listening to CNN say, we have to investigate Russiagate. The White House forced the FBI to come to a conclusion, and pretty much all the things we know that the Obama administration did. Oh, God knows what. There's been more about the tarmac thing. I haven't really looked into it. With Bill on the tarmac, with the head of the Department of Justice, and like the whole thing about them talking about their grandchildren. Yeah, okay. Here's the thing: people are getting more sophisticated, but some of the old tricks still work. Some people see a bunch of people protesting, kind of like the retired set, watching CNN, and they see these protests, and they can get kind of, into the whole, oh shit, there's a revolution, The rest of us aren't susceptible to that. We literally have to see like Molotov cocktails, cops on fire, tanks rolling through like Tiananmen Square. Then we'd be like, oh, okay, this might be more serious. But we're so used to all this staged bullshit that even then we'd be like, is that CGI? I mean, I remember there was a lot of doubt about the ISIS beheadings and how they look like they're in a studio. People just automatically kind of think things are fake now. Because I guess we're smart enough to see movies and think that those aren't real. And if you're in a place where you don't think that like all the special effects in a movie are real, and the movies are real, and then you see something that looks like the movies, and just like looks multiple camera-ish, or looks, CGI-ish, all that stuff, it makes me wonder like what kind of ass you have to be to kind of not think that you're being manipulated. And I know, I mean, here's the thing. The people there that are being pushed that way, they're getting like, literally like, Facebook messaged, and people are kind of hunting for people who will like make good, useful idiots, so to speak. I don't really blame the useful idiots as much because they're being hunted. I mean, people are going after and trying to find them. I remember when I was more of a Bernie-crat, and people thought I was much more left-wing than I was. I'm really more of a centrist. I just believe in like universal health care or some form of it. I believe in like universal higher ed or some form of it. But I'm a little bit different than most of the people that even believe in that. I remember I was getting people with like very suspicious names, very Middle Eastern names, would in like this broken English, like you okay Palestine, like they would try to start talking to me about how Palestine, I should be against what's going on in Palestine and all that stuff. And I just kind of was like, whoa, I don't want to be involved if you're some sort of like, ISIS / PLO or whatever the Palestinian groups are called these days. I just don't want to be involved in that. All right, that's not my fight. I got other fish to fry. Other things I stand up for. I don't want to get into that whole thing. It gets people too crazy. So I'm not going to go, and start like, talking to people about should we start protesting, Israel or something like that. I'm from Queens, New York. That is just not something I can do. All right. Everyone that's on my Facebook will like find me in Florida and shank me in the neck. And they get crazy about this shit. So even if I had an opinion about that, I am telling no one. So this kind of happens to me. So I see this kind of hunting that these groups do, where they go after people to see if they're of the same political ilk, and they kind of try to convert them a little bit. So, for the so-called useful idiots, I probably shouldn't call them that. They're just regular people that got slightly converted or pushed to be a lot more active. There's always kind of the herd mentality. You could always say, oh, I know a friend of yours. He's going to be down at the thing. It would be kind of disappointing for me to tell him you're not showing up. And, like there's all these tricks of the trade to use peer pressure. That's how people deal drugs half the time. You kind of use the peer pressure, or you sell like, Fuller or Brush or whatever. Those door-to-door things. Oh, your neighbor just bought like $200 worth of stuff from me. They know it's superior, and they got the nice house. They're smarter than you. Maybe you should buy it, and then you'll get a bigger house. It's the kind of loose implications. I talk about this a lot, so this is not only fitting. It's not only kind of keeping on one track, it's also kind of keeping on the main purpose of my channel and my podcasts. People get manipulated, and that's not just the people who are on the bottom, but the people who are the people who are pushed in kind of middle management are the most manipulated, because they have to really toe the party line. So whatever group they're part of, this indivisible. And like I said, they could be absolutely legit, just like every other group. They're pushing people, they're twisting people, they're manipulating people. That's what groups do. So I'm not disappointed in that. I think my intelligence is slightly insulted here. And I think you should kind of feel that too, that they're kind of staging protests. There's still just kind of these Stato hate Trump questions and statements and, boos and yells. I mean, it's using, it's kind of like somebody who's really good at being on stage and they can whip up the crowd against anybody. That's a whole bunch of what debating is. You get up there and you go, well, I'm not a fancy city lawyer. I'm just a country lawyer. I'm like you people out here in the audience. And I'll say, my mama used to say, and you spit out some like old ancient epithet that doesn't really apply. And then everyone's like, yeah, hate the other guy. Yeah, we hate him. I mean, the Simpsons, especially the earlier seasons, were so good at showing how stupid the masses are and how manipulatable you could, just the ease of manipulation. Oh my God. It was, by the way, like I grew up on The Simpsons and I used to laugh a lot more than I do now. I wish there were, shows that were just as funny. I don't think Family Guy really catches it. It's more of a shock jock. But the Simpsons were so cerebral, and they put out the, things like hypocrisy and also just kind of how easily a group of people can be manipulated by kind of like a Barry Obama who just like has that sweet sounding voice. I mean, if Barack Obama was in jazz, women would be throwing underwear at him. He just had that kind of silver tongue. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's accurate, doesn't mean it's good. The devil evidently had a pretty silver tongue, right? Isn't there all those theories that the Antichrist will be like, this politician who can just sweet talk everybody? I'm not religious, but I'm just saying that, that's in our zeitgeist. That the most evil of people can be the Bill Clinton-esque type politician that can kind of sit there and tell you that dirt out front that they don't own, that you need to give them lots of money because it's really special and your plants will grow really good and you don't even farm or garden. But you're like, I'm going to start now because Bill told me that's not dirt, that's soil. Like you'll get all stupid. And that's kind of the thing that can happen to humans, but we're getting more sophisticated. We're looking at these things as staged. We're looking at these things as fake. We're kind of automatically assuming at this point because so many things have come out. There's even, I'd say there's some people who believe in the whole crisis actor thing. I don't really, because they show pictures of people that just don't look like the other person. I don't even see where they're going. This is the same person. Because if you say they're like these super makeup artists that can make the same person look completely different, then you show two people that look completely different, and they go, see, they're the same person. It's like, how could you possibly? Anyway, so what's going to happen now? Now that we're kind of getting more sophisticated, we're looking at things as kind of staged and fake, and just like these manipulations. First thing is already happening. They're going to double down. They're going to think that, we're not pushing hard enough. We're not, because this has been happening for like 60 years, definitely post World War II, where the propaganda was kind of simplistic and it's just like, we're good. USA good. Nazi bad. this guy hero. Like it was very simplistic, and we all just clapped, and and even if when you see the propaganda from those days, you feel like clapping. You get like kind of patriotic. But then that had to get a little bit more complicated, didn't it? We had to weaponize terms like conspiracy theory. We had to, which that happened in conjunction with the Warren Report, because the Warren Report was such an unbelievable crock of shit that we had to kind of minimize the damage by calling the people who were going into detail about it conspiracy theorists. That's funny that you can weaponize that. Like, oh, look, a person who's independent has a theory. And you kind of automatically made that a conspiracy theory. And now we're using it more rightfully. We're using it as, okay, listen, like with 9/11, a lot of people believe that there was some sort of government involvement in that, or they let it pass. They knew the plan, and there were explosives in there. A lot of people believe it was just kind of an inside job. And that's the basics of it, right? And even if it wasn't, it was used to take away our rights, the Patriot Act. So that's kind of like the basics of it. And when people go into details, that a lot of those theories become kind of conspiracy theory-esque. And one of the reasons is because we just really don't know how somebody would pull this off. If they're within our government, everything's just kind of like, this is suspicious, but so is this. It's almost like so many things could have happened that they're competing with each other. So all they did was really knock out some of the really ridiculous theories, like it was like a cruise missile or something. And then there was some sort of hologram that made it look like a plane. But most people kind of believe, I don't think you have to be like a really left-wing liberal to kind of believe that, something's off. And that was kind of the feeling with the Warren Report, with the Warren Commission report. Something's not right about this. Something doesn't jive. And it's those people who become the independent media, the people who look into it. And I think the mistake a lot of them made was to kind of come up with this full, complete theory that, was very challengeable and that you can call a conspiracy theory. It kind of played right into the hands of the people that really wanted that term to be weaponized. So we kind of go on, we get more sophisticated. Now we have, you go into movies, you go into TV. Now you're kind of telling the TV people what to say, or, maybe you're telling editors of newspapers, they can say whatever they want, just make sure they include this in the second paragraph. There's these operations that we've found out about with Freedom of Information Acts of people going in and kind of trying to propagandize to the populace, and not in a, I know people say propaganda doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but let's just say from what I've heard, it's bad, and that's hearsay, and I know it. But we're just getting, like I said, the zeitgeist is shifting. It's just like we've gone from kind of automatically believing things to automatically not believing them and going, well, where's your evidence? So you still have this kind of CNN, elderly people, or the very far left wing that's just kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and they're still those who will believe anything that the institutions put out, even if it's self-contradictory. Within in 2 sentences, it contradicts itself, and they'll kind of just go and those people are still around. That doesn't mean we're a dumb populace, though. Just because we have a lower part of the bell curve, or people who are being manipulated right now, who maybe later on will kind of get a grip. I think a lot of us get a lot of our information from the internet. No one's arguing with that, right? Especially the younger crowd. Even us Gen Xers are like that, because we grew up with like Windows 95 and stuff. So we became kind of computer oriented. So maybe us geeky Gen Xers, right? Being in the first wave of computer geek. So there's this sophistication coming into the populace that did not exist. There's this communication apparatus that is kind of like going from newspaper to TV, and its paradigm shifting powers, and things are going to change. Presidents are, and what's funny is Barack Obama like started this in certain ways. We're going to have social media presidents. We're going to have people, politicians are going to kind of start with social media and go from there. People getting into radio, podcasting, people getting into YouTube. You know, they're going. A lot of the information people are going to start in social media and maybe branch out to the other medias. Like I had kind of started with my college newspaper. Wow, I was really involved in college, and I still got good grades, so I'm not a dummy. So that was more what was available to me. And then, of course, the internet became more sophisticated and easier to use. And not that I can get my soundboard thing going, but at least I found out how to download some of the programs, right? So it's getting closer. So what happens now? So if a populace is going to be, quote unquote, brainwashed or, pushed in a certain direction, you're not only going to need to control media, you're going to need to control education. And not even education as in you need to kind of brainwash them and constantly tell them things. You kind of need to keep them away from critical thinking. You need to keep them away from other sources of information. You need to kind of keep them simple. And we've done a great fucking job at that. We've kept our populace just kind of in the dark. We have free compulsory education, public education, up until 12th grade. So we kind of have a stranglehold on the minds of the young. And that's what's happening is with now that they have the internet too, they're getting information that they specifically didn't want to really give out. They didn't want, because they're kind of learning critical thinking just in like looking at clickbait and looking at real articles. They have to do their homework, right? And instead of buying a newspaper, remember we used to do the current events things and we'd buy newspapers. They try to, it's like a civics thing almost. Like, get involved. Read this 4th grade newspaper, like the 4th grade reading level newspaper that doesn't really tell you anything. So we'd kind of go into those things, but we didn't have people commentating really on it because that was a whole other section. That was the editorial section, and nobody really read that. Or if you did read that, like a lot of the editorials were kind of dumbed down from dumb people. So it was... hit or miss. You'd rarely get like a good editorial. Some newspapers had to have some really good editorialists, like Jimmy Breslin. I think he was in Newsday. So there were people who were still trying to be like actual journalists and actual reporters. But that wasn't like, people wouldn't really notice that. They just kind of do their homework. But now when people are doing their homework, they have to tell between clickbait and actual articles. So when we talk about the fake news, I think a lot of people are kind of snickering because they're calling the online stuff fake news, and everybody online already knows what the fake news is and what isn't. To a degree, everything's becoming more sophisticated. So you'd have like something like BuzzFeed be supported by this group, and PolitiFact is supported by this other group, but they're the same group. And, you have these kind of complications where they're kind of pushing a narrative. then you start to learn, wait, these people are just kind of pushing a narrative. There's no, I'm not getting anything out of this. And teachers inadvertently are probably saying, this is bullshit, this isn't bullshit. So they're kind of inadvertently teaching people things that maybe our system wasn't really meant to teach them or didn't want to teach them, because they're getting more sophisticated, and it's quite by accident. And so now the educational system is changing because kids have the internet. And most parents don't put on like all the controls. All they do is like, the 18 plus controls to keep them away from shyster porn. But they don't really do the whole, you can only go to Disney after they're like 8 or 9 years old. The whole big ugly world of the internet is open, and people have to kind of deal. They have to deal with trolls. They have to deal with clickbait. They have to deal with arguments they would have never had. And they're being pushed hard. Like, what's the facts? What thing are you talking about? What's the issue that you're talking about? I don't understand what the issue is. I see that all the time on Facebook posts where people are getting political but not really saying anything, and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Be an adult. State an issue. State your side. State what your evidence is. So people feel like it's almost a protection to be up on the thing. So, like, let's say even if someone's like, I disagree with you because XYZ, if you don't have a comeback, you look like an asshole. That you are just that, like, kind of left-wing, protester that doesn't know really anything about the environment, but just, global warming bad, mean to environment bad, and they didn't read House Resolution 38 or 48 or what it really does, or what the law was before that and how much it costs and how useless it was or how it's repetitive or redundant. They were being pushed in the opposite direction, which is fucking awesome. We're being pushed into the have some information or shut the fuck up direction. And that's what the internet is doing. As, ugly as it is, it's a beautiful piece of art. It's a beautiful symphony. And it's really pushing to the point where these people on TV, these people in the newspapers, these people that are part of old media, they're just too far away. They're my age or older, and they weren't kind of the computer geek. They were just like the floating head for whatever reason they went into broadcasting, and they missed the boat. I'm sorry they did. Some of them might be awesome. If they didn't, we might have more Charlie Roses, growing up in that generation. But that whole generation of like the late baby boomers, early X, and whatever was in between, they just believed anything that you told them. And they were not privy to this new form of information exchange that has really shifted the paradigm in ways that these people can't even fathom. They're at a total loss, and it's great because they want to get more sophisticated, and like, the Hillary Clinton campaign will pay a bunch of trolls and blah, 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 and it'll blow up in their face. I remember being part of like 13 or 14 Bernie groups, and I think 10 of them were attacked that one night. And what they would do is they'd put up pornography, like kiddie porn. Like somebody would literally go in there, put up kiddie porn with like some made up like Facebook, ooh, big hacker. They made up a Facebook, and then they'd have somebody else go and, oh my God, they're putting up kiddie porn, and then they get shut down. All right. So it's, they think they got more sophisticated, but then all the people in those groups were looking like, what a shitty scumbag thing to do. And how the fuck do you have kiddie porn? What kind of asshole, evil piece of shit are you? And they would just, they just got more and more staunchly against Hillary Clinton. And I remember saying on Facebook, I'm not as afraid of Trump being president as I am Hillary Clinton. In fact, I don't even know if I am afraid of Trump. I agree with him on TPP. I agree with him on jobs and economy. I don't think he really has a stance with like gay marriage. I don't think he's going to like reverse abortion rights. I am scared of the Republicans that have been empowered by him winning and them now having the presidency and because he's got to throw his party a couple bones, and I'm afraid of which bones those will be. But I was deathly afraid of Hillary Clinton. I really, and a lot of libertarians were too. They saw the same thing. We were gonna have another 8 years of Obama, and and you can go on like Gavin McInnes and a bunch of other like centrist and right wing people and find out, and a lot of black activists and minority activists too, and they'll talk about how shitty Obama was, and this just isn't like you can't just label these people Nazis because it's like a chimera. It doesn't exist. I'm sure there are like 4 or 5 guys in one of the southern states who still have pointy hoods. But other than that, to kind of like make these sweeping statements, it's again become obvious. It's become obvious that you have an agenda. It's become obvious that you're lying, or at least exaggerating. It's become obvious that the people that are making more and more, as we look at these kind of quote-unquote right-wing people, these centrists, these people from like MRA groups, more and more as you look at them, like look at The Red Pill. That's a movie I'd actually pay to see, and I really don't go to pay for much of anything because, I don't make that much. You can change that, though, at Patreon, BL Kirk 1. We're being red-pilled all over the place. And it's our eyes are being opened in a lot of ways. And that doesn't mean if you're a liberal, you're going to stop fighting for, a better educational system or better health care, better, a better safety net, better unemployment, all those things that used to be more the like unions fighting for, because they wanted a safety net when things went wrong and they got hurt. And, we want safe workplaces, but if the workplace injures you, you should have certain rights. These liberal talking points haven't gone away. They've just been kind of steamrollered over by people who care about transgender bathrooms more than they care about somebody feeding their family. And as important as transgender bathrooms might seem to a lot of liberals, I think that they should, hold someone feeding their family just as important, if not more. We could deal with the pronoun things once we're done with the other important stuff, I don't want anyone to suffer, whether they're transgender or whatever. But, are we really having that conversation now? I mean, we might have been at war with Russia if Hillary Clinton got into office. At least Iran. We would have been in Syria, putting up no-fly zones and safe zones, and those safe zones would have turned into war between us and Russia. So we kind of saw the plan, and we said, "Well, I don't like this. I'm liberal. I'm anti-war. Why would I be for that?" I'm not saying that we shouldn't be strong against, countries that do bad things, but there has to be some evidence, So that's about all. Wow, I sound like Styx now. Just think about these things, because if there are groups and protests that you're seeing on the news, don't think that that's really indicative of what it used to mean. That's kind of my basic point. All right, so good night and good luck. Much love to all. See you next time.